You go back into 2013 and I'm making $48,000 per year with an entry-level finance job, which is good for a kid just out of college at that point. When you talk about risk, the clarity of my career progression, had I stayed in this corporate job, was a much bigger risk to me than taking a chance on something, right? If I were to stay there, I would have gone from financial analyst 1 to financial analyst 2 to finance manager to senior finance manager to finance director, senior finance director. You get the picture there. And in 20 years, I would have been, if things had gone really well, CFO of a large public corporation. Most people don't ever even get there. And to me, that was just not fast enough for my ambition and perhaps the yearn for freedom that I had. And so I began studying, like, what do I really want here? Well, I want time freedom. I want the ability to direct exactly how I spend every waking hour of my day. And the FIRE movement became very attractive to me at that point in time. So I actually stumbled across two resources that guided my thinking back in 2013 on my journey. One was called Mr. Money Mustache, a funny named financial blogger who had a really big impact on me, who retired in his very early 30s. And then BiggerPockets. And I was going to combine these two schools of thought, or that was my plan. That's what I did. As I was frugal my way to financial freedom. Frugality is extremely powerful, even if it sounds unappealing at first, as a financial lever, because it both increases the amount of capital you can accumulate in your personal portfolio, and it reduces the amount of wealth that your portfolio needs to generate for you to live off of. My plan wasn't necessarily to be frugal forever, but it was to start with frugality to get the compounding approach working. We can talk about that later if that's interesting. The real estate component was the other path to this. I just thought real estate offered a chance for better returns and more stable long-term returns than other areas to invest, which can support time freedom, right? The cash flow from a paid-off rental property, for example, is a very reliable relative stream of income compared to other investments, very inflation adjusted. So I decided I was going to house hack, move into rental properties one by one, and be really frugal to save up for those to get the snowball rolling.
Amazing. So you basically were a fan of BiggerPockets, is what I'm hearing, before you actually got your first job there. You were third employee, director of operations, and then you rose up the ranks as CEO. Since you were so ambitious, did you ever feel like you were building somebody else's dream during these years at BiggerPockets?
It's funny with this ambition thing, because yeah, sure. If you go and start your own business, you can always do better than even joining as an early employee. But BiggerPockets, when I joined, I was a fan of it. It was already changing. Like, I already had the playbook. I knew that if I followed this, I wouldn't be a multi-millionaire, but I'd be really well off in 5, 7, 10 years. It was so obvious to me how special the company was and what BiggerPockets was doing for me and likely for other people, that there was just, I didn't even really put a analysis to it. It was like, obviously I want to be a part of this company, this mission of what's going on over here. And so I just threw myself into it when I joined in 2014. And by 2017, I ended up leading the company as the founder stepped back.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so I'm asking you all these questions because I'm starting to feel like entrepreneurship doesn't necessarily mean that you have to found a company. I feel like with the creator economy and more creators, I just feel like the lines are blurring in terms of like what it really means to be an entrepreneur. So for example, when I hear your story about being employee number 3, becoming CEO, scaling the company, I think of you as an entrepreneur in the context of BiggerPockets. I'm sure you're an entrepreneur probably in other ways, but I actually feel like you're an entrepreneur. Would you agree?
I consider myself an entrepreneur at this point, for sure.
Yeah.
I kind of have a different path around it, right? I didn't found a company, but I have other advantages too, right? Where being in a private equity backed business, I had 2 very powerful mentors, right? First was the founder, Josh, who I learned directly from for 3 years. And he taught me the concepts of growth hacking, of how to be scrappy, how to build up things. Another great mentor was a man named Mike Zawalski, who was the chairman of the board, very traditional private equity operating partner. And that's a very powerful playbook, right? There's another set of systems that one needs to scale a business, which include the ability to hire and fire, to actually manage, to actually deliver quality performance reviews, to put together a real strategy. What is a strategy? What does that look like? What does a real annual operating plan look like? These are things that don't make sense for a very small business with a handful of employees most of the time. It provides a great deal of inflexibility and can actually constrain growth, but they're absolutely essential to go into from a startup or a small business to something with significant revenue and significant market capitalization over time. So those kind of gave me a really unique toolkit that I think true entrepreneurs who found companies and retain 100% control will actually struggle to develop in some ways in a privileged way, because you can only get some of those lessons if you have a true boss with positional power over you. And of course, I continue to learn these lessons with our next partners at the Chernin Group, with folks like Maureen Sullivan, and so getting those playbooks was very powerful. So I feel like I got a pretty cool playbook here of both the lessons from a classic founder and the traditional kind of corporate private equity playbook that I can merge, and be fun to see where that takes me in the next 30 years of my career.
Yeah, it is a really cool background. So I'd love to kind of dig deeper on some of the things you just mentioned in terms of what your mentors taught you. So you mentioned the founder taught you how to growth hack, taught you to be scrappy. The motto at my company, like our team motto, is we're all scrappy hustlers, right? So we love being scrappy. I'm scrappy. What were some of the scrappiest lessons that he taught you?
I think it was just the rate of experimentation, right? It's a rapid application of the scientific method, and everyone terms it differently in terms of what they're doing. But it's how quickly can you get something out to market, test it in front of folks, and move on to the next thing. I mean, we tried so many things so quickly as individuals in those first couple of years at BiggerPockets. A podcast was one of those things, right? A YouTube channel was one of those things. What was that social media platform that came up that was all audio that grew?
Clubhouse?
Yeah, that one. Yeah, Clubhouse. Those types of things. You're just always trying experiments, and there's a high rate of failure, and they're shutting down. And that never ends, but the prioritization, I guess, shifted later. But yeah, it was those types of experiments that we're coming out with: artifacts, documents, and webinars. It was just an amazing rate of testing.
Yeah, it's lean into the wherever the audience was, you guys were kind of leaning in, testing it. If it was good, sticking with it. If not, getting out.
and missing so many times too, right? It's like this thing: 9 out of 10 businesses fail. So you start 10 businesses, right? That's a big path of entrepreneurship, or getting things started in a small business.
Yeah. So as this is a pretty personal question, but I feel like it's important for the podcasters who are tuning in. You're employee number 3. Did you get equity? Did you profit share? Did you negotiate for that? Did they give it to you? How did that all work?
It's funny. I never, in the entire time I worked at BiggerPockets, I never asked for a raise, and I never asked for. I don't think I ever asked for a compensation adjustment or anything. I said yes to essentially all the opportunities that came my way for the founder. And in those early days, I was 100% loyal. I've always been 100% loyal to shareholders, but it was 100% loyalty to Josh as an individual and the company at the same time, right? And it was just, how can I help? What can I do here? I also just loved the mission. So I would work all day at my job as director of operations, which at a startup means you get the coffee and you do revenue, and all the other things in between, right? And I would just say yes to those opportunities, and things began to develop. Would you like to do this? Hey, there's a sales thing here. Sure, I'd love to go and sell this revenue and earn more money. And eventually, come 2017, founder had to step away, and he said we're gonna sell the company, which makes a ton of sense, because you're not going to leave your large company in the hands of 27-year-old Scott at that point. So we decided to go through the sale process in 2018. And of course, I get an equivalent to equity at that point, right? There's a whole bunch of ways to structure it. I got an equivalency to that was based on the valuation of the business at that point. And I was like, I love this company. I love what I'm doing. I love the mission. And someone's going to buy it. I don't know who it's going to be, but whoever it is, I don't think I'm going to be able to fool them. So I don't think I'm this 27-year-old kid. I have to do whatever I can to become a quality president or CEO candidate for this new company, because I don't want to someone else to lead the business. I want to do it. And so I just threw myself into it for that entire year to that effect. And I guess I did a good enough job to get a crack at it, where certainly a mentor, a boss was brought in as chairman of the board. But I was able to get that opportunity to lead the company at that point for the next 5, 6 years.